Hi everyone, welcome back to Homeschool Peace. I'm Cassandra. I'm a homeschool mom of 3 kids. Here in our home for our history, geography, literature, and student readers, we use Sonlight. Sonlight is a literature-based curriculum, so there's going to be lots of books and lots of reading. And so I've had parents reach out to see how we do multiple cores at the same time, or how do you put your kids together for your Sonlight course. So that's what this video is today. I'm just going to be sharing some ideas or tips of things that have worked well for having all of my kids doing 2 different Sonlight courses at the same time. So if you are using Sonlight or you're thinking about using Sonlight, hopefully this video will help you out. All right, so my tip number 1 is to combine your kids when possible in the same core. So for my 2 younger students, they're only a year and a half apart, and so that means they're actually only 1 grade apart. So I have a pre-K student and a kindergarten student. So they're a perfect age to combine together, and that's one of the great things about Sonlight is that you can have multiple kids ranging a little bit in different age together. If they're like 2, maybe 3 years apart, try to put their cores together, and this would obviously be before you actually order and get the materials, sort of decide where you could put the kids together. As the kids age and get a little bit older, obviously that difference in their learning styles and their abilities doesn't seem as extreme. So obviously for even just some older kids, you could try to put your older kids together so that when you're sitting there and just actually reading the books to your kids, there is just less to have to read. So in my home, even though I have 3 kids, I only have to worry about 2 cores, and that right there just makes it so much easier to use the Sonlight program. My second idea for you is to combine your kids together during Bible time. Here in our home, we have our Bible time in the morning when we're eating breakfast, and I like to sit around all around the table and read our Bible stories together. And so when I started this year off, I did have 2 separate books for Bible time, and it was causing a little bit to be confusing, a little hard to get through, as well as there's different memory verses for each child to memorize for the different cores, and that was a little bit difficult as well. So what I decided to do was to shelf the Leading Little Ones to God book that was part of Core B, which we will eventually get to when my younger ones move into Core B, but instead using the 101 favorite stories from the Bible to be the primary book that I am reading to my kids during their morning breakfast time. So when I'm going through this, my older one, though he's not in P4 and 5, he's still listening. He's part of, this is actually his lesson. He knows that this is something that he needs to do and be part of. It's not just something for my younger ones to do. So he's listening to the story and participating in the questions. And then for the memory verse, he is part of learning the memory verses. I did sort of increase a little bit of difficulty for him being a little older. I did add on this little verse of the week sheet, and I do have the printout for this down below, so click that link and check it out. But it's a spot where they can write out the Bible verse, the memory verse, and then draw a little picture, talk about some harder the words that are maybe part of the Bible verse and vocab words, as well as then some check boxes for when they memorize it. So adding this on for him and then reading this 101 favorite stories, I feel is perfect fit for him in Core B for his Bible time. And like I said, we'll eventually get to this book, but when my girls are a little bit older, and it just made it simplified Bible time. It made the morning flow better. So that's sort of my second tip. Put your kids together during Bible time, even if that means maybe you have to shelf one of the Bible books, or maybe not doing the specific Bible readings that are part of their core, and instead do something all together. It'll make it a little bit simple for you. My tip number 3 for you is to read ahead when possible. So Sonlight comes with a grid schedule, so each day you can see exactly what you are supposed to read. If there's a book that's, say, a poem book, or maybe it's a reader that your kids are really engaged with, go ahead and read an extra day, or an extra page, or an extra poem. Say for your Mother Goose poems that are part of P4 and 5. That's an easy one that if your kids are really having fun reading the Mother Goose, you can read a couple more ahead. And so then on a day when you have a reader that's a little longer, or you're having a little bit of trouble getting through all the books, then you have that little bit of a buffer, a little bit of breathing room, so it doesn't feel like you are behind on your schedule. So I hate that feeling of feeling behind, and so that's something you just really don't want to have part of your day. So don't let that affect you, and just by moving ahead and just sort of reading a little bit more ahead, it'll just make it have that little bit of breathing and make it easier for you. The fourth tip I have for you that works really well with my family is to read all the books together. So instead of setting up to say, for your, say, an older child, this is the time I'm sitting here and reading my Sonlight books to you, and then later you have a time that you sit down with a different, child and you're reading those Sonlight books together. I found it works really well just to gather everybody around, and maybe yours will look different. Maybe you will sit everybody around a table and everybody is eating lunch, or maybe it's a tea time, or hot chocolate time with your family. Or the one that works really well for my family is I just sit them down on the floor in our living room and I give them all kinds of building tools like Legos and magnet tiles and different blocks, and I have them just sit there and just start building. And then I just sit there in a comfy chair and I just pull out a book and I just go through it, reading whatever is the next book that needs to be read. And I'll jump around from, say, my older child, I will go ahead and say read a book that he has that I'm reading, and then I'll go and jump to one of the younger students going through one of their books, and I'll just jump back and forth between the cores. But I have everybody sitting there engaged, they're listening, but they're busy because they're building with Legos, but they're quiet and listening. And that has worked really well, and I really like almost getting all my Sonlight reading done in one time all together. And then once we're done with that time during the day, we can put the books away and we know we have finished our Sonlight. So find some times to gather everybody together and read together. My fifth recommendation for you, if you are using the Sonlight readers, so this is just the standalone readers, that's what we use in our home, tie those together with your language arts time. If you are using the Sonlight language arts program, those readers are already baked in as part of your language arts program. But for my family, we use the Logic of English for our reading lessons. And so I love those extra Sonlight readers. I just love having my kids read to me. And so what I do is, instead of using those readers during the time that I'm reading to my kids, I pull those separate. I keep those with our language arts. We sit and do our table subject for our language arts work for Logic of English. And then when we're done doing that table time, we move to our comfy couch and we sit there and I have my kids read to me using those Sonlight readers. So I find that just easier to accomplish that part. So if you also are using the separate Sonlight readers that aren't tied with the language arts, try to actually put those with your language arts program, whatever language arts program you're using, and it'll just make it flow a little bit better. The last recommendation I have for you when doing multiple cores is this cart. This is just one of those craft carts. I picked this up at Michael's. It's just a metal wheelie cart, and I love that it has the 3 tiers. And so in our home, having the 2 cores, I basically have 1 tier for each core that we're using. So this bottom one is my P4/5 information, while this middle tier is my core B. If you had a 3rd tier going, obviously you could use this top tier. I really don't know how you could do more than 3 cores, so I give you credit if you are doing more than 3, but you could put whatever you have for the 3rd core up here. And so what I do is I only include the books that we are currently reading. So if I am reading a book, it's here. If haven't touched it yet, or we've already finished reading it, it goes on the bookshelf. So these are more active Sonlight readers. So this, I have my Sonlight P4 and 5. This is just the instructional guide. This one's actually one of the smaller binders. And so this one, I just use the Sonlight binder and it fits really well on here. And then also I have then just the books that I am currently working on are included down here. And so then whenever I go into any room, if it's at the table and we're having the hot chocolate time and we are listening to stories around the table, I wheel the cart right to the table and I just start reading from this cart. If I am sitting on the couch, I move this over to the couch and I sit there and I read it from there. So it's really great to move from room to room, and it just helps you keep organized on the books that you're actually actively reading. And so that's what's on this one. So then for my core B though, I do have my core B in a smaller binder. I have found that the larger Sonlight binder obviously is too big to fit on here, and even on my bookshelf it's just hard to maneuver the big binder. So this little one works great. So this is my core B, and then I have the specific core B books that I'm working on with my son, and that's on this one. And then when we've finished a book and we're done with it, I then go ahead and shelf it. So getting a cart like this has really helped us out. So if you are interested in that, I have the link below to the cart that I purchased at Michael's. So go ahead and pick up a cart, but it'll really help you keep your cores organized and whatever active books that you're currently working on. I hope some of these ideas were helpful for you if you are using Sonlight across multiple cores or you're using it with multiple kids. Hopefully this will help you out. If you have any questions with what I shared today, please leave those questions below. I would love to help you out. And before you leave, don't forget to hit the like button and hit that subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.